Welcome to another Round the Rotary with me, JP Warren. And with us today, we have a man that I feel like I mentored and trained how to perfect his not only his drive, but also his short game in golf. This is Andrew Workman, Strategic Account Manager at DHT at Ulterra Drilling Technologies, LP. Andrew, how you doing today?
Pretty good, JP. How are you, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Man, I'm doing all right. Just pour myself a cup of coffee, ready to get the day going. Excited about our conversation we're gonna have today.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I think it'll be some things we've all thought about, and some things that maybe haven't quite surfaced on the top of our head in regards to the subjects that we've kind of got lined out. But I think it'll be good.
And you know what? If no one else thinks it's good, at least you and I are the only listeners to it. You know.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get this going. All right. Give us a little introduction and background about yourself. Kind of what brought you where you're at today.
Okay. So I started in the oil field about 11 years ago, working for Gyro Data, and started with them in the field at the field level, working on the directional drilling side of things. Stayed with them for a good while. Worked my way up from the field into coordinating, into a little management, and then into sales, and then a larger sales role there at the end. After that, I was kind of just looking for some opportunities to kind of stretch my legs and challenge myself a little bit. So I got involved with a small company based out of Central Texas that was on the water transfer side of things, small private family-owned gig, and basically all that they focused on was South Texas and West Texas, which was great. It was awesome. That didn't really change anything that I did or had been doing for years. But my main objective was to just build our book of business and create revenue. So we had a pretty good run. It was great. And then there were some things that changed when we got to a certain level, and decided that, they wanted to go one way, and I thought maybe a different way was the right way. And so we just said, you know what, hey, maybe now's the time, thanks. And let's just stay in touch and continue to help each other out where we can. And then it was primo timing for sure. I've thought really highly of Ulterra for a long time. The number one drill bit provider in the United States. I mean,
Great people over there also, man. I mean, there's some solid guys over there and girls.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just top to bottom, the company's on point, and I think everybody would agree with that. I don't think anybody I've ever heard have a bad thing to say about Ulterra. So came over to Ulterra, and actually
real quick, when did you go over to Ulterra?
I went over there in January of this year. So
Okay.
Crazy timing now looking back at it. But especially because we had our first child, April, and I had Gentry about 5 months ago. So if having your first child wasn't enough to screw up your household, I just went ahead and decided to change jobs as well. So whole lot of uncertainness rolling around our house about 3 months ago, but all good. It's all worked out.
At least things have gotten better with the certainty. Right?
Yeah, sure. At least for one side of it, at least we know a little bit more about Gentry. So, no, came over and Ulterra has decided that they wanted to kind of diversify their company, and they had some guidance from some folks to say, hey, you guys are killer in the drill bit world, but that's kind of all you were, or that's kind of all you are, which is fine because that was their goal. Their main focus was to be number one. Okay, so they did that, check the box. So now we formed a group called DHT, which is Downhole Technologies within Ulterra, and we're dipping our toe into the completion side, into the production side, the drill out side. We've got some frac plug, drill out PVC bits. We've got some downhole extended reach tools for drill outs. We've got some larger drilling agitators. What we call a torque buster, which is to mitigate stick slip. So a lot of cool stuff going on, and running a lot of different directions. But it's going to be fun. It's been great. It's been a good time.
It's been a good time until about a month ago, correct?
Man, holy smokes! I mean, I know,
dude. Let's talk about that for a little bit, dude. I mean, so for those that are listening, currently we're recording this in mid-April, and we are currently at stay-at-home orders. I'm not sure when this will be published, but the world economies has stopped, and as of this morning, waking up, oil dipped again below $20 a barrel. I guess Saudi selling it at discount prices to China. So it's tough right now. It's depressing. It's not optimistic. It's gloomy right now for our industry. So with everything going on right now, I mean, so how has this changed your mindset in how you not only professionally but also kind of personally?
Yeah. So I mean, it's to say it's gloomy. I think that's a really fantastic word to use for this, because that's being very elegant. Dude, it sucks, man. I mean, whoever's listening to this has been through most likely at least one of these. I'm sure there are some folks on here that this is their first, but we're young pups, right, JP? I mean, we're the young cats. We're in our mid 30s.
Well, I'm turning 40 next week on April 22nd, but don't act like you didn't know that. Go on.
So yeah, mid 30s. And, but I feel crazy when I talk to different folks that have been in the industry a long time, and I tell them that this is the worst I've ever seen, because I mean, we've been doing this 10 minutes. But I've got confirmation from all these experienced guys that are like, this is so crazy. I mean, just, it's so intense. There's so many different things that have come along with this downturn. And it's just, man, it's like nothing I've ever seen. And I think the craziest thing is this pandemic that's just on top of it. It's a perfect storm.
Unfortunately, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but unfortunately for that perfect storm, I'm not sure about your feeling from this, but dude, it seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's like shit. Like OPEC and Saudi agree on production cuts. Great. It's just like it's one thing after another, and then and right now, I'm not sure if you're following, but I think Texas and Oklahoma right now are talking about hitting quotas on production as well. And then there's very pro camps and very anti camps of production quotas.
Yeah.
So it's go on.
It's crazy. I mean, it's nuts because, if we refer back to the conversations that we've all probably seen on the news or read about or listened to in a podcast, the first thing that I remember is, Trump, he bought a tanker and, put X amount of barrels of oil out in the middle of the ocean. He was like, this is going to help. Well, any of us that have been in the industry, I think that's a really nice gesture. But, it's not going to be enough to change the reality of where we are. And then you've got, the Russians and the Saudis, pissed off at each other, and, that's never good. And we're trying to play the mediator in the deal. And that's tough because, there's a lot of side conversations that have gone on that we don't know about in regards to the agreements that have been made. And it's just, yeah, I mean, and then, we finally hear that we're going to cut 10 million barrels a day. OPEC, agrees to all this. Maybe even 20 million barrels a day from what Trump was saying last night in his conversation, in his address to us in the United States. And then you wake up this morning and it's sub 20. So it's like,
yeah.
All right.
So going back to the question, how does this change your mindset about the oil industry, right? I mean, now and moving forward?
Man, during these times I've had, I'd be lying if I said it never entered my mind, but you're like, man, maybe the oil industry maybe it's done and it's just not for me.
Right.
It's gone through my mind. And I'll be straight up. I hope I'm the last one standing because I'm never going to give up. And that's kind of ignorant, in a way, but I love the people in the oil business. I love my friends, the relationships and friendships that, you've made in the oil business. It's like nothing, and it's an old school business, and I love that side of it. So, to tie a bow on that, my thoughts, is, yeah, it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes that come because of this. We've already seen it. I mean, we've got friends that have been unfortunately, without work, and there's going to be more to come. And it's such a sad deal. But I think it's going to be an unfortunate giant cleanse to our industry.
I'm sorry. You got cut off. An unfortunate what?
Giant cleanse.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of things that change the way we do business. And I think there's going to be a lot of companies, that kind of approach it differently moving forward. And there's going to be a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's going to be a lot of, companies that kind of strategize differently and maybe come together, and become one big company. So I don't know. I'm excited about what we're going to see and kind of where we're going to be pointed after this whole deal. But in the long run, hey, let's take it full steam ahead, grab a bull by the horns, and let's rock.
Well, how is it going to change your approach to, I guess, getting in front of customers, or maybe I mean, you don't have to get into the details about pricing your product. I mean, what's going to weigh heavy on the services that you provide? Is going to be the relationship, the quality, you don't have to speak specifically to Ulterra. I'm talking about how are you going to change your approach now, or how are you going to change your focus or your true north when you're conducting business?
Yeah. So, I think it's easy to, everybody who's a sales professional probably thinks this way, and definitely at one point in their week, they've had a customer that is specifically tailored towards this. But I think the term is value. You've got to have some extreme value add that you're bringing to the table. And it doesn't matter at this point. The relationships are great. And it's just like any of us would expect, somebody was selling something to us. Yeah, we might be buddies, but if you can't bring me value, it's going to, unfortunately, probably the buck's going to stop right there. Because these guys are getting so much pressure. When I say these guys, I say these operators are getting so much pressure.
I'm sorry, you cut out again. The what?
The operators
Right.
are getting so much pressure to squeeze every single penny and opportunity out of what they've been dealt, that they've just got to have the best that they can get. And, to boot that, they need the best price too. So that's tricky.
Well, that's tricky because that kind of stems from the last downturn we had, when it went from, you have all these great relationships, and then, it went strictly to low cost. So that's kind of the shadow that we've gotten from the last downturn. And I feel like we still haven't shaken that as an industry yet.
Yeah. The price deal, I mean, we could have a whole podcast on that specifically, possibly, but,
well, no, this kind of ties into the next talking point that you and I discussed. I mean, in the last downturn, we navigated through reduction in price, tightening our belts, and do you think similar strategies can be taken during this downturn? in comparison to last downturn?
Yeah. So yes and no. I think very similar strategies can be taken. You've definitely, just like you said, you got to tighten your belt. You got to take a deep breath, and you've got to be very strategic in not only where you put your time and effort, but also where you're spending money, because, our bosses and their bosses and their bosses are getting questioned and asked, because we've got to maximize the dollar, and we've got to optimize our margin the best way possible. And one of those ways is to really, really pay attention to how much is going out. The interesting thing that I think, like I said, is different about this downturn is having to do all this. So one thing that I always think about during a downturn, which is kind of what I put into place during the last downturn, is how can I just out hustle everybody? I mean, yeah, you can be as smart as you want to be, but at the end of the day, can you be up at 6 o'clock until 9 p.m. just hitting it hard? And how can you out hustle your competitor? And that's probably the biggest thing that I would recommend or tell anybody that's in the industry or thinking about coming into it, is during these downturns, you gotta take it to the next gear and out hustle. To combat all of that, we've got this pandemic. So how do you out
Where you actually,
yeah, where you can't hustle?
yeah. I mean, how do you out hustle? How do you start your day at 6 a.m. and end it at 9 p.m. where you actually really can't be in front of customers physically or have any face-to-face meetings with them or breakfast runs or lunches or anything like that?
I know.
So how does one do that during these times?
I know, man. It's crazy. And that's the part where when you said, can we implement anything like we did last time? It's like a yes, but it's like a no, because yeah, I can't be at somebody's office at 6 o'clock and then wrap up and be done at the end of the day at another office at 6 o'clock, because we can't go anywhere. So, I've had to learn and challenge myself in a bunch of different ways. Specifically, man, this Zoom deal, it's a big deal, and I had never heard of it before the pandemic. And was never, and was never, I'm still to this day, even when my wife uses FaceTime, when I'm on the road or whatever, prior to all this, to see our baby, I'm not a big FaceTime guy, never have been, but I'm getting more comfortable with it for sure. Just because of Zoom and all this stuff. And it's the best way that, we could see somebody. I mean, we can't touch them, but it's as close as we can get, and I mean, stuff like that, these Zoom happy hours, Zoom meetings, WebEx meetings. I know Ulterra right now, there's a huge push for these WebEx meetings, just to see each other. It's a little further. It's taking it a little further than just calling somebody on the phone. So I think it's great. It's a different approach, and it's a good way to connect.
But the one thing is also, I mean, it's a different approach, but I feel like, before, about a month ago, if you said, hey man, I'll FaceTime you, or like, let's get on the line and, let's FaceTime and have a cocktail, have dinner or whatever that is, or have a meeting. People were pretty uncomfortable. It's like, what? No, we need a FaceTime. I don't want to look at you. But now I feel like it's kind of pushed people to, that's kind of the norm. So I was talking about this on another podcast. It's like, now when I get a phone call, I'm like, dude, just FaceTime me, man. I need to see somebody. I need to, see somebody else besides my wife, myself, and my daughter. You know what I mean? So it's kind of getting to the norm of these FaceTime and Zooms and looking at people through the screen. So, and I mean, after this, we're talking about, how, getting back in the hustle side of things. I mean, I'm kind of curious on whether these operators will allow people, vendors, or service providers into their office, number one. And number two, I'm curious as this changes the entire landscape of not just the oil and gas industry, utilizing retail, commercial retail space, such as offices, and it could shrink the office footprint, because working from home is it is the norm these days. So I'm kind of curious on that quote, returning back to that hustle you're talking about, if it's ever going to get back to there, or we as salespeople are going to have to evolve and use the tools and technology at hand to I guess reach that level of hustleness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point. I'm a little nervous to kind of see what comes out of this in regards to just, bird's eye view of our country and the way we do things. Like you say, for example, this office space, the retail footprint, office space, whatever you want to call it. I'm thinking.
I just made that up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, it's like, man, what if somebody comes to the table and says, I mean, we're all in the oil business, so I'm going to loop it back in, but it's like, okay, we've got to maximize, our margin dollars here.
Right.
And one way that we can do that is cutting down on G&A and cutting down on what we're spending on rental office buildings. So you guys brought to the table the same amount, if not an increased amount, working from home. Why do we even have an office? And that can be, we could argue that for a while, and I'm not for or against having an office. I think there's benefits in both ways. I think we've all seen working from home is tricky, to say the least. Whether it's a dog, a cat, 4 kids, whatever you want to call it, that's running in the background. It's really tricky, and trying to schedule, if your wife works, trying to schedule your podcast over her podcast, and strategically, so you're not sitting in the same room, talking in a microphone. It's gotten tricky, but I don't know. It's going to be nuts.
No, it is a question of, balance. I mean, there are benefits and there are down. I mean, the biggest challenge to me right now is the pantry and the fridge, but things will change. I think people will start utilizing the apps and the technologies to have remote workspaces. I mean, you're right. Do we need 3 stories downtown Houston or Midland or what? No, I mean, reality, you don't need it. I mean, it's going to be one of those things. It will change. I see it changing. I guess how people work moving forward.
And I think this whole thing, the whole pandemic is if you take a step back and you kind of sit down and think, kind of open your mind a little bit and just say, okay, what does this look like? Because everybody's locked down. All the small businesses are taking it in the chin, more or less.
Right.
Nobody's driving anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. I mean, I don't know if my wife has physically moved her vehicle in a month.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. And that's what stinks as well for our industry, because we've just cut not only are we trying to cut production, but, utilizing petroleum-based products has just been cut extremely. I mean, just crazy amounts, over 50%.
So it's a question of oversupply and no demand right now.
That's
there's no international flights.
Yeah.
Well, I've read something that domestic flights were down 96% or something like that.
Dude, it's unbelievable. And that's what I mean is, like, it's something like we've never seen. I don't want to even try to throw a number out there, but I was listening to this, this YouTube kind of podcast deal that the Texas Railroad Commission put together. And he was just kind of bringing light to how much of our daily consumption comes from, personal transportation, public transportation, jets, buses, deliveries, all that kind of stuff, and how important that is. And because we're on lockdown, how significantly that has impacted our daily use. Right. And it's over 50% hands down. I think it's closer to 70%, but, it's unbelievable. And that's really going to change the way things go in our industry and in our world, I believe, this point moving forward. Now, there's a lot of really smart people out there, and I'm excited about the challenge because it's gonna be in our history books, and your daughter and my daughter are gonna be reading about it. Maybe not on paper. I'm sure it'll be on some sort of electronic device,
hologram.
Yeah, it'll be hologram, or it'll just be input into their brain as they sleep by the cloud. But no, I mean, this is historic, and it's crazy what's going on. But the people I feel for right now are the small private businesses. These folks that went out on a limb to try to start something up from the ground up, and kind of got it tuned in to right where they want it, and then this whole thing falls out. And hats off to these folks that are thinking outside the box, that are trying to do, home deliveries and, drive-through eateries. And I mean, it's just, I couldn't imagine what they're going through.
I think after this, there's going to be a huge, I think there's going to be a huge surge in, social distancing or social anxiety services. For example, I think counseling services are going to go through the roof, when it comes to, because people will be I remember when when it was stay-at-home orders was issued. The day before, my wife and I were walking on the street. People were looking at us, smiling, waving. And the day that they announced the stay-at-home order, we walked on the street and no one would look at us, and everyone was keeping their distance. So I think, there will be a lot of fear that is going to lag even after the economy opens up again. People are going to be nervous to be around crowds. People are nervous to go to the movies. So in regards to opportunities, you kind of touch on this a little bit, the home delivery services. I think technology is going to move forward when it comes to, these apps like House Party or Zoom or whatever it is. It's going to, we're getting a little background noise there. Okay, what's good? So I think it's going to be one of those things where there will be a shockwave that's going to be felt long after the economy opens. People will be. I think people will have a lot of fear of being in public places again, going to movies, concerts, whatever that is, and hopefully life returns back to some sense of normalcy soon. But
yeah, I don't disagree with you. I hope that it's not as. I hope that it's not as severe, and I hate to be the doom and gloom and bring up bad, history, but when we had some of those shootings, a couple years back, and they occurred in movie theaters or at concerts, whatnot. I know a lot of people, and myself included, were really nervous about kind of pinning yourself into a dark room with your family, watching a movie with people you've never met before. Not right. Saying that that's bad, but it's a natural feeling of uneasiness. And I hope it's not to that level, but yeah, it's definitely probably going to be very different for folks when, you haven't seen, strangers, for a long time, and you've been used to your family. There's a comfort level there, unless you're a guy like me and you act like a young puppy dog when you see a random person. You just want to walk up to them and rub all over them. But, yeah. I look forward to that every day. Just meet somebody new, because like you say, all I've seen is my wife and my kid. So I'm like, new person. Here we go.
I know. I find that when I go to the grocery store now, it's like I'm looking at all the people stocking the shelves, being like, "Hey, what's going on? What's new? Like, how's everything going? Like, sir, I'm trying to do my job. If you don't mind,
dude. 6 feet. Give me my 6 feet.
6 feet. So let's start wrapping this up a little bit. I know we're coming close to the time. We can kind of tie in the message to the audience, but also maybe kind of a mentorship message. Like, what what message would you give people either that are experienced in the oil and gas industry, or even people that are inexperienced in the oil and gas industry? Like, let's start with the first one. What would you say to the experienced people? You know, our colleagues, people that have been in the industry longer than us.
Yeah. So, this is totally different. Like I said, I've had a lot of these guys that have been in the industry a long time tell me it's nothing like they've ever seen either. I think the hardest part for those guys, is to kind of think outside the box, like we've been talking about, utilizing these Zoom happy hours, utilizing WebEx video calls, FaceTime, all that kind of stuff. I think that's very different for them. And it's a challenge. I think, I don't mean this in a bad way, but technology, it's getting to where it's running out in front of me too far, but technology is a challenge and it changes so quickly. And they didn't grow up around technology. So, trying to utilize that and help these guys. And I'm one of those guys that's, the whole text messaging thing, group text, that, trying to help them understand and utilize stuff like that. I think that's a big deal,
Right.
But, one thing, we talked early on about value, in regards to our approach to this market now. The value add is kind of the magic term that I'm running with right now. The other one that I've got is relational equity. And what that means,
wait, say it again. You cut out.
Yeah,
say it again.
So it's called relational equity. And
okay,
you can implement this whether it's your neighbor, your wife, your customer, or your friend. And what that means is just being present, right? I mean, and I think everybody can agree right now that, just giving somebody 10, 15, 20 minutes and being present and being vulnerable, talking about what crap you're going through personally, because of all this stuff, everybody's stressed and got, kids running around and trying to be on conference calls and handle work and can't go anywhere and they're stir crazy. You gain so much equity, with somebody just kind of being an open book. And, I would really strongly suggest that we all, me, you included, that we all try to do more, to increase that equity in our friendships and our family lives with our customers, everything. And I think, that's what we're here for. We're all here to lean on each other and, we'll make it through.
That's a great point. I love that relational equity that you discussed. I'd love to talk to you more about that. But anyway, Andrew, I appreciate you coming on. I think we're about done with time, but man, I'd love to get you on again and kind of have another conversation with you.
Love to, man. Anytime. I'm all about it. Thanks again for having me, man. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to everybody soon.
Absolutely, man. Take care. Thanks for joining us on Round the Rotary. And if you have any questions that you'd like for Andrew or myself, you can reach us at roundtherotary@cap-petro.com. Again, that's roundtherotary at cap-petro.com. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you cap-petro.com. Again, that's roundtherotary at cap-petro.com.